Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're talking about swaddling. I'm Melissa Gersin. I'm a maternity nurse, founder and CEO of Tranquilo Mat. You might hear a baby crying in the background. I'm at my co-founder Ashley's house and her baby is trying to take a nap, but as you all know, babies never nap when you want them to. So we want him to nap and it's not working. So just if you hear that, feel free to. So I'm Melissa. I'm a maternity nurse. I've got 6 years of experience in the Boston area, working for multiple different hospitals. I'm a happiest baby educator certified, and I am also an infant crying specialist, which is a real thing. So I took that with the Department of Public Health. I've calmed thousands of babies using these techniques, and I'm here to show you exactly how a nurse would do it. So if you're joining us today, again, this is a Facebook Live about how to swaddle. So if you swaddled your baby, go ahead and put a heart sign on here so we know that you love to swaddle your baby. And then don't forget to tag any friends who might need to learn how to swaddle, anyone who's got a newborn out there, who's got an older baby maybe who's having difficulty sleeping through the night, but is still maybe under that 6-month mark and didn't like swaddling. Again, just to remind you, we've got a baby in the background trying to nap, but as babies don't like to do, they're not napping when we want them to. So if you hear baby in the background, we are trying to let him cry it out and take a nap, but not working today. So back on the swaddle. So today, again, we're going to be talking about swaddling. So first and foremost, why do we swaddle babies? The big thing for swaddling babies is that inside the womb, they are tightly packed, especially those last few months. You guys probably all remember those rib kicks and bladder kicks, and it felt like baby was doing full-on gymnastic routine in there. But really, baby was just moving their arm or leg just a little bit, but they don't have a ton of space. So what ends up happening is they actually come to like that. They feel nice and snug. They feel loved. They feel like they're getting a big hug inside the womb. So that is why babies like to be swaddled and why swaddling is much like being inside the womb. The other thing is young babies end up, you probably noticed that a newborn to probably about 3 months, they got their eyes crossed, they can't really coordinate with their limbs, their arm, they might be trying to tell their arm to move so that they can suck their thumb, and instead they smack themselves in the face. So if you have a baby swaddled, you've got their arms down, there's no accidental hands, hitting themselves, because sometimes when their hands or legs are moving around and they don't mean for themselves to get like right in their face, it actually scares them. So swaddling can be really helpful with that. So those are the kind of the two big reasons that we swaddle. And then I'm going to give you some basics on what to do with a swaddle before we actually go in. I'm going to give you 3 actual tips for swaddling. So don't forget to tag any of your friends that are out there that really need to watch this video on how to swaddle their baby. Because I've got 3 of them and I can guarantee you there's one that you've probably never seen or heard of. So you're going to want to tune in for that and you're going to want to have your friends join. So the reason why some of the basics with swaddling are: keep the environment in mind. If it's super cold out, it's a cold wintry day, you want to make sure that you've got, maybe a fleece blanket instead. In the summertime, a fleece blanket would be way too much for babies, so you're gonna wanna keep it in a nice cotton or the muslin, swaddle blankets. The other thing that you can just remember is babies need about 1 extra layer of clothing to keep warm based on what you think you're comfortable in. So if it's a cold winter day and you're outside and you feel like you need 25 sweaters, and 12 pants just to keep warm, then that's what baby needs, but 1 more layer. And so that's where your swaddle blanket comes into play. Your swaddle blanket is that extra layer to keep baby warm. And so again, if it's the winter time, you might want to use a fleece blanket, or a late fall, maybe early spring, and you're in a cold climate, you can use that fleece blanket. But in the summer, that's just going to be way too much. So make sure that you keep that in mind. So that's one thing. The other thing with swaddling, a big square blanket is actually one of the best things to use. Those rectangular ones that the hospital provide are actually really small, and they work well for a newborn, and then your kid grows about a month old and forget it. That thing is just not gonna fit. So you're gonna want a really big swaddle blanket. You guys have probably all heard of like the Aiden and Nay blankets. There's just a ton on the market that you can use. So a big blanket. You can use any blanket but like I said, a square one is usually best. It'll give you the best coverage, and you want it to be big. You can use any piece of fabric. If you wanted to go to the fabric store and just get, a square piece of fabric cut off for a couple of dollars, just make sure that there's never any loose strings. So if you're not using a swaddle blanket specifically, you want to make sure that there's no loose strings that are extra, extra for the baby to get wrapped around their hands and feet. Because when there's an extra little piece of string, sometimes that can get caught around little fingers and toes, and you don't see it, and it can cause baby pain. So anytime you're using any kind of blanket that is not a swaddle blanket specifically made for baby, then you're going to end up wanting to use you make sure that there's no extra strings around so that it doesn't get caught on baby. So that's another big key. With younger babies, now, while you guys are here, if you want to tune in and let me know how old your babies are, so we can get some kind of personalized tips here for swaddling. So make sure to include how old your baby is in the comments, so I can give you some tips. But yeah, so younger babies, usually under 3 or 4 months before baby starts to roll or is working on rolling when they're not asleep, you want to make sure that their arms are down, and you want to make sure that their arms are down. So again, that they're not. So Stephanie's got a 2-week-old. So Stephanie, you're definitely going to want to keep your baby's arms down. And I'll give you tips on that in just a moment when we move to the actual demo portion. So, so arms down for a young baby under 3 or 4 months. Once baby starts to roll, you can start to bring one hand up towards their mouth. We've got Nicole joining us. She's got a 7-week-old. Probably want the arms down for that baby as well. Thanks for joining us, Nicole. So arms down. Often newborn babies keep their arms up like this, and they've got their hands, up towards their face, and that's great. But then how are you supposed to swaddle their arms down, right? So you're going to want to push you're just going to want to hold your hands like they're kind of clenched up. You just put your hand with a little bit of pressure, and they'll ultimately just relax their arm down. And then you're going to swaddle the arms right down by the side. So younger babies, again, under 3 months, swaddle their arms down by their side. Once they hit the 3 to 4 month mark, you can start to maybe put one arm and keep it like a little bit up towards their face, and keep the other arm down. And then as they grow, you might want to, once they're rolling, you want to avoid the swaddle altogether, or you definitely want to keep both arms out so that if they roll over in the middle of the night, they can actually get themselves up and away from any dangers in the crib. So that's something to note, but that's where you would start to maybe keep one arm out to swaddle, and then the 2 arms up, so that they can break free from the swaddle a little bit more. But it really does help to keep them nice and secure as they're sleeping. So Mandy's joining us with a 15-week-old. That is 4 months, I think. Trying to do math right here on the fly with you guys. So that Mandy's baby is probably close to rolling over or getting there. Mandy, give me a heart or another comment if I came even close to getting that correct. Some of the other things with swaddling that you want to remember is a tight swaddle. So tight swaddles are actually the best. It keeps baby feeling like they're secure and in the womb. Most babies who, quote, don't like to be swaddled, it's because the swaddle isn't tight enough. It's almost impossible to do a swaddle too tightly, and I'll show you that when we get to the demo in a moment, because you actually just want to put 2 fingers into between the swaddle blanket and baby's chest, and then if you can pull and put those 2 fingers in there, baby's got plenty of room to breathe, and that swaddle is perfect. Most fabric has some give to it, so you're not going to be, it's almost impossible to make baby swaddle too tightly. So if you're swaddling, make sure it's tight, and then think even tighter. And then when you're done, just make that double check to make sure that baby can breathe with that. So that's kind of, the basics of swaddling. That's kind of, if there's any, you want to make sure that it's really, really tight. You want to make sure that you've got a big square blanket. You want to make sure that younger babies have their arms swaddled down. Tip for that, again, arms clenched up here. Is to push, kind of give a little bit of pressure, and then baby will ultimately relax their arm right down when you're doing that. So that's one of the tips for that. Again, you want to have baby have 1 extra layer of clothing. So if you use the swaddle blanket. So if you're warm and comfortable on a hot summer's day and you want to be naked, baby just needs a diaper and a swaddle blanket. So they only have that one extra layer. And if it's wintertime and you've got 5 or 6 layers, the swaddle blanket, maybe a fleece blanket, is best for that particular situation. Don't forget that a loose swaddle is actually a SIDS hazard. So you want to make sure the baby is swaddled tightly, and we'll go over that in a moment. So I think that's it for kind of what I'm thinking of for the basics of swaddles. So if you just give us a second, we're going to switch the camera angle, and then we're going to get an actual live demo with, unfortunately, fake baby, because as I was saying, we've got an 11-month-old upstairs taking a nap, and he does not like to be swaddled. So give us one moment here while we switch the camera angle. All right, guys, if you're just joining us and you're on this break, we're talking about swaddling today. And this is our live demo portion. So you're no longer gonna really be able to see me, but this is the swaddle blanket. You can see how big this is. This is quite large. The first swaddle is probably the one that you saw in the hospital. So you just take one corner. We've got this in kind of a diamond shape here. Take that one corner and pull it down. If you've got an older baby, you can keep it like a short corner here. But if